Hey all. So this is the third war of the season against 4 Loki, and we have so many friends there. I have tremendous respect for the Alliance. Obviously, they're very storied. Great Alliance, and it's always a really solid matchup against them. I love facing them. I prefer to do it a little bit later in the season when it feels like both of us have somewhat more locked into place. But, this is the price of having other successful friends in the game, is that eventually you face each other, and it's a price very much worth paying because these matchups are always tremendous fun. Um, Going over this map was not easy. Lizer did a very, very good job of giving us a puzzle that took a while to solve, and I feel like we did a pretty good job of it, but unstoppable armor is still quite new, and I think for both sides there was a fair bit to learn from this war. We both really came away having a better understanding of certain placements. We had tried new things. This was a fantastic war for data. And on that subject, I have 9 fights this war, which is way more than I try to give to anyone. I aim to keep most people within 2 of that average of 5, so somewhere in the 3 to 7 mark. This is a bit of an aberration, but I was pretty confident that my team lined up well. I mean, you see the team I came in with, Reed, Nimrod, and Tigra. I mean, those are 3 of my absolute favorite champions. That's my rank 4, and the current 2 front runners for my next rank 4. Isn't it kind of terrifying that I have been talking over that incredibly long loading screen? I was really worried I was going to start this war with a disconnect. Anyway, so we start off with Reed against Wasp. You do see me trigger that evade, not intentionally there, but knowingly. I was kind of testing the bounds of the stun, exactly what I could get away with in my combo. I knew that between debuff Siphoner, the fact that if you're ready for it, you can always block in time after Wasp evades, and Reed's native energy resistance, I was just like, yeah, I might lose some health, but it's not going to be a problem. And so now I know exactly how much I can get away with in the stun. I actually meant to not throw suppression on here because I want Wasp to be throwing more special ones, and as we stack these debuffs, she's getting less and less power. But at the end of the day, it's not a big deal because the fight's over so quickly that we don't fully ramp, and in this case that actually works in our favor because the suppression never gets too bad, we never reverse kinetic transference, it's really easy to keep her evade on cooldown, we're good to go. So now I'm up against America Chavez here. I know this is Vegas, so I know that she's a high sig. I really do not want this fight to go wrong. And this is definitely a good placement because you kind of have to worry about, her power gain, and there's not a whole lot you can do to directly counter it. Enter Tigra. So I'm starting out here comboing because all I want to do is take her over a bar. Because if I take her over 1 bar, then that means that, okay, hopefully she'll throw a special 1, and I'm lucky here, I haven't even triggered Dex yet. So we don't have to worry about Mystic Dispersion, although I did throw on the Petrify pre-fight from Reed to try and blunt that. You'll see here it does come into play. But by this point, I've countered enough special ones. The fight's over. We just counter a few special 1s, get to our special 2, throw it, game over. Tigra has just been so fantastic this season. I mean, she has limits, but I love using her for fights like that. As long as there's not something that takes it out of her control, she works for Vivified just because she hits that hard. And I love doing that. So this Hulkbuster is a really interesting placement. I actually got a little bit of pushback in deciding to take this with Reed, and I completely understand why. Because Power Snack comes back on a 7-second timer. Unstoppable Armor comes around on a 10-second timer, and Hulkbuster gains his own native armor on a 15-second timer. 2 of those timers overlap from a display point, but that also means that there's just a lot to pay attention to in here, and potentially a lot of places where Hulk can gain that 3-second passive unstoppable and be stun immune for the whole duration of it. See, like right there? That is a potential problem. But I figured that Reed was just going to do so well for all of the other challenges of this fight that it was worth it. Because if we had used Spider-Man 99 or Mr. Negative, neither of them would have had as much of a counter for the shock damage. Now, a SIG 200 Mr. Negative with light energy actually has quite a bit of energy resistance, so that would be fine, but at the moment, we don't have one of those. And so Reed's native energy resistance and the debuff siphoner get us the same place. Additionally, we have to worry about him throwing, fewer specials because of suppression, and now we have Petrify fully stacked up. So when he triggers backup recovery, he actually loses power. We're doing plenty of damage every half second by reversing willpower. And because Reed has, if you refresh his debuffs with his heavy, he pauses them for 3 seconds. That means he has 18 seconds to refresh them again. That is enough time to play around all of the armor procs. And so then, once he finally throws 3 special 1s in a row, we get so much extra power gain that we rocket up to a special 3. This is going to do a ton of damage. I don't think it finishes him right, but this just went so well. I did have to dodge a bit at the wall. I did have one missed parry or dex where, I got hit before Reed bailed me out in the combo, but I really think that is one of the best counters because he just has so much control over all aspects of the fight. And if you need to dance a little bit, he has the tools for that too. So I was really happy with how he did on that. So then we have Kitty on Footloose, and this was a placement that we hadn't seen yet. I think that Silver Centurion might actually be a better counter here because he has access to the slow and just does a bunch of damage against her and won't crit. But we didn't have a rank 3 Silver Centurion available at this point in the pathing process, and so I decided to use Nimrod. Now, a small spoiler, this isn't going to look like a terribly risky choice, but it felt a little bit risky, because Nimrod does have to block, and he doesn't have any counter to the Unstoppable or the Evade. And so if you are not careful, and if you end up, blocking too many hits because you get cornered because she's unstoppable, if those things go wrong, you can eventually send her to a special 3, and Nimrod can absolutely die to her damage over time. So when I was practicing for this, I initially practiced using step backs to try and avoid her gaining power, but I was finding that, it's a little bit harder than Domino, who's kind of like the basic level step back, and I was getting hit in the face probably about 8-10% of the time, and that was just ultimately unacceptable. So I decided instead to go with all 3 Mr. Fantastic pre-fights, as you can see here, to blunt Kinetic Transference and mean she throws fewer specials overall, and I think that was the right choice. You see here we knock her down again with a special 2. I mean, we just built right to it. I was hoping that Nimrod would blitz her down this quickly, that nothing would get out of hand, because that's kind of normally what he does against mutants. But I find that you often have to be somewhat careful when you're testing out a new nuke in war. If you haven't taken the fight before, and you're seeing the placement from an alliance that you respect, then you need to be careful and maybe not assume that you're just going to get it down as quickly as you hope you do. Thankfully, in this case, Nimrod was Nimrod, and I think because of the pre-fights from Reed, I had enough control over the fight that needing 2 special 2s was not a problem. Without those, I could see that getting out of hand if you're not careful or if she decides to not play nice. So next up we have this Magneto House of X. This is a very easy fight for Nimrod. Sorry, Carl. But it's obvious why he's here, right? I mean, with high ground gone, this is one of the best nodes for him. If you don't bring a prowess counter like Nimrod, well then, he's just going to be unblockable on basically all of his specials, and that special 1 can be a little tricky. There are other options for it, but this is just, in my opinion, by far the most elegant. It turns off everything about him, removes the prowess without triggering return policy, ramps up Nimrod really quickly, and we've already done a really solid amount of damage. I don't even think I needed to go for the special one here to get the energy vulnerability and the energize. But, you know, he wasn't dead just yet, so I figured I'd go for that because my Nimrod is now Sig 80. Look how quickly we got back up to the special 2. His signature ability is really powerful because remember, it not only makes that energize longer, it makes it stronger too. So throwing the special 1 was almost not a cost at all. We got right back up there. I just love using him for fights like that. I'm so happy with Nimrod. Now, here's the interesting one, because I think this was here in part to make sending a Nimrod here a little bit trickier, because I don't really have any advantages on him unless he triggers the regen when one of us gets to 20%. Additionally, it's very difficult for me to build armor ups here, because I'm getting them on my timer, but I can't parry freely to grab them, because that would trigger Hard Knock Life, and I'm not immune to ability accuracy reduction because he's not a mutant. So if I do that, my parries will start failing. Now, our active shocks are doing great work, and I think I did originally mean to go ahead and use the special 1 here at first, and then to try and get to a special 3. I think I missed that, paying attention to one of the armor timers, because, you know, you don't want to throw a special 1 into an unstoppable Gulk. That's a bad idea. But we throw the special 3. It does an okay amount of direct damage. Like, that was solid. We're definitely winning the HP race. We're not in danger of timing out. But remember, it's also based on how much health the opponent is missing, so this early in the fight, it's not going to look quite as good. Now, I was pretty confident that Nimrod's Special 2 would trigger Face Me, because it is a passive damage over time effect. That seemed beyond obvious. However, I wasn't sure if the regen in Face Me was possibly coded the same way that, like, Deadpool Classics regen is, because Nimrod can remove his signature ability and stop that passive healing. I shouldn't have hit right there because that armor up could have punished me. Just a note right there. So I was like, maybe I'll be able to get rid of the healing, and then I'll do a ton of damage with the special 2. Obviously that wasn't the case, but given where we were in the fight, how much time was left, I figured that was worth risking here, just so that we knew, and in case it did work. Because obviously it did not work, but now we're just, you know, playing around the armor ups. We're going to be fine. We have the Energize up. We're going to get to the special 3. If we don't kill him before we get there, it's definitely going to finish him off, because he just does not have that much health left. So see there, the regen triggered, and we did remove that. And here we go. Nimrod definitely has one of the coolest special 3s in the game. It does get a little repetitive, but that beam is just so sweet. And then boom, that was over 50,000 direct damage because he was already low health. Love that. So for this Kingpin fight, I'll just say up front, there's going to be a lot going on. I'll try to speak to it as it goes. Tigra's moveset matches up very well against Kingpin's, especially against his special 1 and his heavies, and if Neutralize is not up, then his heavy will trigger Unstoppable and she'll benefit from Mystic Dispersion, kind of like when you use Doom against him. That's all good. He will purify a lot of her ruptures, but those ruptures still do damage as they apply, as you're seeing here, and they feed her power, so it's a trade-off that I'm willing to accept. So our basic game plan here is rely on special 2s like this one right here, which do less damage than Tigra normally would, but still do good damage, and to use her Neutralize to control the Unstoppable on his special 2, the armor ups from the Global, and the Vigilance from the Node. Now, right here you see, because I'm trying to bait out a special, the Falter triggers and then another falter is going to trigger, and we get backed up, and I am going to get forced to a special 3. That chain of events happened primarily because, for a reason that I cannot really follow in his kit, Kingpin's overpower buff somehow completely bypasses neutralize. It says it's only a 100% chance. It doesn't say that it ignores ability accuracy modification. I'm not really sure what the deal is there. I knew that it bypassed neutralize going into this fight. But this fight definitely would have been a lot easier if it didn't, because all those overpowers stacking from our special 2s is what caused that falter chain to happen. So we go ahead and push him to his special 2 again, hope that he uses it right away. But what you're really seeing in this fight is just because of power efficiency, because of how often he has a special attack to throw and how often he gets pushed to his special 2, we are having an awful lot of time where we just don't have neutralize up. And unfortunately, that means that Tigra is not doing the work that we want her to do. Because look at that, he just waits, and not only does the falter go up, but also our senses are off. And now when he throws this next special 2... Oh no, wait, we do get our neutralize up for that one. But vigilance was up. Because neutralize was down for long enough that vigilance was still up, he basically took out all of our health in one go, because vigilance means he cannot miss. And I don't think that I had fully processed that, because when I originally read this combo of nodes, I was like, oh, okay, cool. There's vigilance on the defender, so that even if you reflect the falter on him, you can't use it against him. Cool. I understand what that's supposed to do. But it also makes it harder to use Tigra here if the opponent is being conservative enough that your neutralize doesn't have good uptime. Now, having Kitty on the team would help, which I did do a few times in off-season. And I just think that this node is maybe not great for Tigra without Kitty because of that. Just because the uptime matters so much. And against certain opponents, you know, if you get that vigilance up enough, she suddenly becomes a little bit less safe to use. Yeah. I think in hindsight, that was not a good assignment, honestly. We had a rank 4 Doom. He didn't as directly counter the global. He can't stop the armor ups. But there was so much going on in that fight that Tigra didn't really stop the armor ups either. And at that point, if her primary strength against this particular global isn't coming to bear, then there's really no reason to use her. And so, you know, this is on me for underestimating the way those nodes come together, especially when I do not have the Kitty synergy to extend my neutralize durations. And that death was completely preventable. I could have sent somebody else. I could have sent Doom. I could have sent Omega Red, who probably could have won that fight even just playing in the corner. Liza herself did exactly that against a different champion here, and I think Kingpin is actually even easier for Omega Red to take down. There are several things we could have done, and, you know, that we will do next time. So, you know, war is a team sport. We do tend to run assignments by each other, but ultimately, I was taking lead on this one. It was my idea in the first place, and I think Tigra is one of those champions where if you're looking at somebody else assigning her, more than most others, you kind of assume, okay, well, if the person who made that assignment is the person using her, then I'm sure they've considered the angles. And so I understand why that one didn't necessarily get second-guessed, because they trusted my judgment, and this time I was just wrong. And so I'm sorry for that, because it did impact the war. It wasn't the decider, but it definitely affected the course of it. So lesson learned for next time. On to Heimdall here. As I talked about last time, Conflictor somehow is not turned off by Tigra, even though the other nodes like it, Masochism, Buffet, Power Snack, are. But we are fully ready for that this time. We just know that we're going to be countering an absolute blizzard of special ones. And we're okay with that. So go ahead, let myself get pushed to the special 3 here. Throw it to get our senses back up. Better to be slow here because, you know, we could throw a special 2, but if we push him to a special 2 and neutralize falls off and it's not evadable and, you know, maybe we've done something else and oops, he has an armor from the global, so it's now unblockable as well. Like, we don't want to do that. So we're trying to play nice and conservative here. We get our senses back up, but this is going to finish it. But I should have thrown it immediately because the first hit would have ended it, and that was just a little bit of sloppiness at the end. But yeah, Tigra is an absolutely fantastic counter there. No problems, easier than Cersei. The node is better than Kingpin. That one's good. You know, I'm still kind of learning exactly where she works and where she doesn't. Unfortunately, learned this lesson in season, you know. But then we have the fight that, out of all the ones on the map, I was probably least worried about, and that was this Domino. And that's not because Domino isn't a difficult defender, but it's because she doesn't really benefit all that much from this particular node unless you try to bleed her. And then she shrugs it and gains power. And so this is basically just an aspect of evolution Domino. And so if you kill her quickly, before aspect of evolution starts to become a problem, then it's a pretty vanilla fight. And luckily, Nimrod is good both at countering Domino's nonsense and at taking her down quickly. So this is going to be pretty vanilla. I did go ahead and use a suppression pre-fight from Reed, because that's going to mean she crosses fewer bars of power, and aspect of evolution is even less of a deal. Which is why I'm bothering to refresh it with heavies from time to time. But really, this just isn't much of a deal. Back off there because she went lucky. She throws it, it's unblockable, but it's easily evadable. And we're taking advantage of, again, that really nice, long energize. It's so nice having his SIG get higher, and it's going to be even better when he's SIG 200. Another thing you'll see right there is that even though she was lucky, I still felt comfortable throwing that special 2 safely because we had just crossed over to 10 charges, and because my Nimrod is duped, that means his specials are unblockable. And I was just confident that, you know, eventually one of those shocks would land. Even if she evaded the first one, we were in no danger. We did a ton of damage, and then we just finish her off with basics on the way back up to the next special 2. So really simple fight there. So 9 fights, feel really good about 8 of them, and learned a valuable lesson about a new node this season and Tigra's, you know, limitations on the last one. So, you know, I can deal with that. Again, I feel bad for the impact it had on the Alliance and our momentum in the war. We did lose this one, and by more than one. Like I said, we learned several different lessons spread throughout. So I'm not gonna get too down on myself, but it's, you know, it's always a bummer because I could have prevented it. And I've noticed in the past, I sometimes get into patterns as an officer where, especially when there are new things on the map, like there obviously are right now, I sometimes look at a fight and think, that fight looks awful. I will feel bad if I give that to someone else because I won't have a clear game plan for them. I will be telling them on some level, these are my basic thoughts, but you're kind of going to have to figure it out. You're going to have to invent this one. We don't know how it will go. And I hate doing that. And so I have something of a habit of instead taking those fights myself. I didn't really do it last season, and notably last season was deathless. but I did a little bit of it at the start of 2 seasons ago when High Ground was relatively new, and I paid for it with 2 early deaths that season. And now we have this relatively new global, and I think I'm falling a little bit back into that. So this is me saying it out loud to catch it with myself, and I just need to accept going into the rest of the season that, yes, we learned things in this war, but even if there are other things that we haven't learned yet, if there are other fights that we haven't solved yet, I need to be explicitly okay with sending them to some of my other guys with better counters and just saying this is as close as I can give you to a plan and trusting them. Because the guys in BG3 are absolutely worthy of that trust. Yeah, and I know that. I tell people that. I'm proud of that. I love this BG. I think I just need to internalize it a little more. So let this war be that lesson to myself. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I mean, the death aside, I love bringing this team. Like I said at the start, like just 3 absolutely amazing characters. So much fun to play. So much that they can take. If I had only taken 8 fights, this war video would have been awesome, right? So that's what we work towards. Congrats to 4Loki. They did a great job. They won this one, like I said, by several. It was a really interesting defense. I feel like we learned a lot. Like I said, we came out of this war with a lot of data. And good job to the guys in SSx too. Like, we did lose, we died more, but I feel like we solved a lot of problems, and we're going to continue to solve problems, and I feel good about how we're set up for the rest of the season, right? Like, we're coming out of this first week 2-1. We've already faced 2 very strong alliances in 4Loki and SAS, beat one of them, lost to one of them, learned a ton. I'm feeling good. So let me know in the comments how y'all seasons have been so far. Where are you sitting at the end of week 1? How's Unstoppable Armor been for you? What are you excited by? What are you maybe a little scared for? Let me know, and until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care.